The September 11th board workshop. Everybody, I guess, remembers this is September 11th, and I would like everybody to just take a minute to think of those people whose lives were changed so dramatically during 9/11, and some of those lives are the first responders that are still being changed day by day. So bless them all, and this is a great country, and we love being here. So thank you. The first order of business is the budget process update. We start in September getting the chart of accounts and stuff together. In October, we'll start doing the numbers that we have through the September or July or August statements to get a forecast of what we need. And towards the end of October, we're really into it. And then our budget meetings begin in November, the town hall meeting to go over the budget in detail with the residents. And I believe the last Wednesday of November is our formal budget meeting. So all we do from here, the Finance Committee and Sarah will be working tirelessly over the next couple of months to get our budget in order. So we just wanted to give you a heads up. There's some very important components to the budget that have contracts coming up, notably is landscaping. So as we bid that contract, we're going to have to adjust the budget according to what we find out when we get some bids and feel it down to earth. So we are cognizant of all that. We're working towards that, and all eyes are on the budget from now on. Landscape contract, you want to?
Well, we had a meeting yesterday, the first meeting yesterday of the COCC committee, and handed over to them a scope of work that the landscape committee put together for them to start coming up with a new document that we can use when we go out for bids to other landscape contractors. So that's the first step. It's going to be a long process. It is our opinion that we should do this right and not rush into it. We want to make sure that we have a scope of work that the landscapers can live with and that we can live with, and that serves this community the way this community wants to be served. We've had a lot of problems over the last few months. I don't have to tell everybody that, but we've also learned a lot as a result of it. And there are things that we now see that we have to do to change the way things are done, both as a community and also for the landscaper, and that will all hopefully be incorporated in a new scope of work with some changes that we're making internally here, so that we move into the next landscape contract, whenever that's going to be, 2020, 2021, whatever it is, with something that we can be proud of.
Well, Ron's right, we had a very nice meeting yesterday, and for those of you who aren't completely up to date on the contract and compliance committee, it's a new organization that's been formed basically to take over and make complete the circle of our contracts between South Shore Falls and our vendors. And as only South Shore Falls can do it, we're starting with the largest and arguably the most complicated contract. So it should be a piece of cake after this. But right now, we're working with the situation that the landscape committee has always been the constructor, if you will, of the contract, and that's now being turned over to us, as it should be. The landscape committee should not be responsible for being the partner with the landscape provider, and also being their, as I said it yesterday in the meeting, their executioner. So the contract committee takes over that responsibility to look at building the contract and then building the compliance to the contract. We'll be having a couple of meetings in the next couple of weeks to put together what our lawyers, and by that I mean our retired lawyers, because half of our contract is made up of residents who are retired attorneys. So we have some pretty powerful people, and certainly people who are very experienced in contract construction. After they get a chance to look at it and we get a chance to put through it, we'll we'll have a sample of the contract and the scope of work that we think we want to put forward. And one of those things will be placing responsibility where we think the responsibility belongs. In my opinion, we've let Down to Earth off the hook a little bit in the sense that we've assumed responsibility for things how things are done and when they're done and whether they're done in accordance with proper procedures. We want to see that be more of a cooperative operation between the Landscape Committee and Down to Earth, or whoever the contractor would be. We'll also be in the process of looking for additional contractors that can service our community, that could legitimately provide a competing bid, so that we don't feel as though Down to Earth is the only one that we can work with at this point. And we're also, and I don't mean this to be a trial balloon, I just want you to know, we're also looking at something that's been missing for a long time in the landscaping, that is a Plan B. We've always thought that Mainscape and Down to Earth are the two big boys on the block, and that's who has to handle this thing. Well, the problem with that is there's no Plan B. If we decide to let go of Down to Earth, or Down to Earth decides to let go of us, it's that simple. We don't have a Plan B. And so we're trying to look at how else we could handle the landscape situation in case we choose not to or do not have a contractor of the size of Down to Earth that could handle it the way we need. So there's a lot of things going on with this. And because of that, one of the first things that we recognized was that a number of our problems here, or our perceived problems, which might be a better way to put it, is that we don't, as a community and certainly as a board, we don't provide enough detailed information about how things work in this concept. We don't have time to, in a workshop or even in a board meeting, to go through the intricacies of how contracts work, how the governance of the community works. So we're going to sponsor some seminars for our residents beginning at the end of this month to describe to the residents the documents that govern this organization and how they work and why we do things the way we do it and why we can't do them sometimes the way you might prefer to have them done. And then the second meeting will be to discuss, in October, will be to discuss the landscaping contract, and then there'll be another meeting at the end of October to discuss our property management contract, which also comes up in a couple of months, or few months. So the group is going to have a very busy winter, and there's those that are threatening to escape for the winter, but they're not going to. So anyway, you'll see a lot of information coming out on how this organization is run, how we handle contracts, who we handle them with, and how they mold into what the best practices for us will be. And I think it's a lot of information that you haven't heard before. So look forward to those meetings when we advertise them, and if you can make it, please make it. We'll also film them in case you can't, because there'll be a lot of good information in there that will help you understand a little bit better what those of us who come onto the board understand in most cases once we get here, because it's a surprise to us sometimes too. So that's where we're going with the Contract and Compliance Committee, and follow us along and either like or dislike what we do and let us know how we're doing. Thanks.
I just want to go over, add to that, unhappily for you probably. This is the 11th of September. We have a board workshop on the 9th of October. I think we need to have a scope of work to look at that board meeting. We could put this thing out to bid after that so that we can have some idea by the end of October, or at least in the very first of November, as to where we think this is going to go financially. Whether we can negotiate the contract or get it done in whatever time, but we need to know pretty closely where we're going to be going budget time, because the budget has to be complete by the middle of November, 14 days before the budget meeting it has to go out.
Correct.
So that's around the 20th or somewhere, something like that. The stuff has, I know Castle wants it 8 weeks before, but that isn't going to happen. It never does. So anyway, keep those dates in mind. I know it's pushing time-wise, but I think we're going to have as many meetings as we need to have to get that accomplished, so that we have something to deal with on the 9th, because the next one will be too late. Okay, new fitness equipment request.
There was a request that was put in by several members of the community and asked that the board review it. And I was asked by the board to go get pricing for, it's a seated stepper type piece of equipment. We have one in there, but it's probably the most used piece of equipment as far as cardio, and they asked if we can add an additional. So the pricing is in this package for two versions of it. There's a sheet that the quote summary gives the two different options, what they cost for each piece of equipment. The difference between the two is the warranties are in the breakdown of what the,
Is it $1,200 for the warranty?
no.
Okay, so we're looking at $3,800.
Yes,
that
correct.
Ashley showed this to me the other day, and I agree, I didn't see why we would want to go to a higher price point,
Yeah,
especially without any background on it.
right.
Maybe when, a few years when we buy the next one, we might
Yes.
find out that there's a difference, but for now, we don't know.
Yeah, to have the additional 12 months of warranty on the equipment is, in a community like this, is great. Especially with
And we can vote on that Monday?
yeah,
That's what we're
absolutely.
ready?
Yeah, you can review it over the weekend.
Okay. The art charter, the Architectural Review Committee has put together a revised charter that's in line with the other charters in the community as to how many members are in it, how they're elected and so forth. So I'll be sending you that in the next few hours, and we'll take a look at that on Monday night. It's pretty much a standard charter. It doesn't change any of the guidelines or anything. It's just their charter. I got an email this morning about a bike incident on Falls Boulevard where a car almost got into it with a bike, and it was pretty clearly by this email the bike's fault. I just want to reiterate, we're trying hard to get the traffic controlled here the way it should be. I think just these two stop signs that we put in have gone a long way. It's unbelievable how many people actually stop there, and the ones that we're sailing through now at least slow down. So we are making progress. We're putting in some more stop signs
3 more.
with the word stop stenciled on the road. But the bike people in this community really need to understand that they too have to follow the rules of the road. Just because you know that you're going to turn right, it doesn't mean the car behind you knows you're going to turn right or left. And please, you bikers, don't wear earbuds and things while you're biking. I mean, you can't hear what's going on. If you're walking on the sidewalk, it's a completely different thing. Jason's going to talk about stepping up and getting police patrols in here. The patrols will write violation notices. They're more like a warning. They will be turned into the community. We fully intend to process violations and fines for repeat offenders of our traffic safety rules and the rules of the road. Sometime in the next month or two, we'll get together and agree on a list of grievances and fines and violations and what's important and what isn't, and the fine schedule. But we're doing this, to promote safety on our roads, and I think it's something that really needs to be done. What else do you got there? Courts, do you have an update on where we are with the
Yeah,
court?
can I just say something on the cyclists? The other day I was turning out of here and the cyclist came down Falls Boulevard and went straight across here without stopping. And, just to reiterate what Wayne said, cyclists have to follow the rules of the road the same way as car drivers do, and that's just not acceptable. I mean, there wasn't anybody coming and he could see that, but that's not the point. The point is there's a stop sign. You should stop, whoever you are.
And these comments, I agree with both of you, and these comments are towards every bicyclist, not just the individual bicyclist, but the bike club itself. I've had problems with the bike club when you drive down the road on Saturday morning and you just can't go more than 5 miles an hour because there's 30 bikes in front of you. They're all across the road. It's the time frame is not as important as the fact that that's not legal. They need to, I get nothing against the bike club, don't look at it that way, but the people on bikes need to understand that they have to obey the rules of the road just like everybody else. And unfortunately, if they don't, and there's an accident, they will be the most affected by it. You know, the guy in the car that runs into a bike is not gonna go to the hospital. The guy in the bike is. And so the bikers need to understand that that's the position they're putting themselves in.
I think the police can give a warning or to bicyclists as well as cars when they're in the community.
Absolutely. I spoke with, because where we're at with patrols is I'm working with 2 deputies to set I can't necessarily make a random schedule because obviously they have to be scheduled to be in here, but it's going to be a varied schedule, so they're here at different times and different, one week it'll be 3 times, the other 2 times, just kind of varying the schedule for them. But when I talk to them, obviously they cannot write a ticket through Hillsborough County, but they can, and we can even produce a violation sheet or something to where they can write it, and that can be turned in just like any violation that would be sent by the HOA to a resident for any other type of violation. So, and then it would just have to be handled through the HOA or the board. But that's something that they can do and will do, and that involves bicyclists as well as vehicles.
And pedestrians.
And pedestrians as well. If they're, anything that would be considered a violation or unsafe act, they can give a warning for it. The board, and going on forward with that, depending on what kind of violations we receive, can make determination on how we want to handle those warnings. But that's something we, start out with a warning and then go from there.
Okay, one other thing, I got an email yesterday from someone, the corner of Cascade and Falls on the clubhouse side, the flowers that are planted at the end of that median have gotten kind of high and it kind of blocks the view. I think we should think about something different to plant there. That's one intersection where all the visibility in the world is necessary.
It's a common complaint, and every time I go out there, I fail to see what the problem is, and I think a lot of it has to do with how tall the individual is, and also what sort of car they're driving.
Yeah.
If you're riding in a low car, then you're not going to be able to see. If you're riding in a proper car, then...
Wait,
then you...
He's been taking Joe Biden lessons.
I think so.
I mean, it is an issue that needs to be attended to, but one can argue that not everybody's suffering from the same problem.
I think also, when we talked about lessening the amount of replaceable flowers that are in some of those beds and putting a few more perennials into, I think we talked about that a few months ago. Next time they change these things over, they should take a look at that. Do you have any update on the courts?
You're not giving us a chance to contribute here. The Landscape Committee has got together a group of people who are looking at these annual plants and their plantings and what plants we use. So if there are concerns about those areas, that should be conveyed to them so that they can take that into account when they sit down and talk about what plants.
Because even though I counted Mirror Bay, they thinned theirs down and they put some more perennials and just had, a smaller amount of interchangeable flowers. I mean, every time they change those flowers, we get dozens of emails about why are they changing those flowers? They're not getting, well, they will be soon. And listen, those little tiny ones they buy, they're cheap, and that's why you get them. But, if you buy them at growing time, I'm sure the landscape committee knows, you buy them for $1 a piece. You wait a few more months until they're this tall, then you're $3, $4 a piece. So you might as well, that's why you throw out some of them.
Well, your point is
It
well
makes
taken.
economic sense.
Your point is well taken. They're cheap, but they buy them by the thousands.
Yeah.
So they don't end up cheap.
Right, the bill is not cheap.
But
Can we go back to the police?
yeah.
I've noticed recently a number of occasions, and particularly on Cedar, because that's the one street I drive down more often than anything else, but the number of times that somebody has a trailer on a truck and the truck's sticking halfway out to the road. The situation just this morning, I mean, I had to squeeze through, and that's the landscaper who's causing it, but we need to have more control, and I would hope that the police could help to contribute towards that so that people do recognize that they can't just, because they want to do something, stick a car halfway out the road, or park 3 cars in the road because they've got a delivery coming or whatever, which nobody can get through. I mean, we've tried to control that, and unfortunately, people don't tend to listen to us in that regard. So hopefully the police can help with that
There was a
too.
similar thing just this morning on Sunset when I came in. There was a trailer in the driveway, and then there was another trailer parked across the street. I think one thing we could do is, and we talked about it once before, is force these contractors in here to have cones. If they don't have a cone, they can't park on our streets. And we can sell cones to make money up the guardhouses. And he also, perhaps we should think about alternate side of the street parking or something like that for utility vehicles. I'm not talking about our cars. But I mean, there's no reason a landscaper should park here and a painter should park here, especially like on a curb. I think we should take a look at parking rules for visitors. I don't think it's so much
Yeah,
trouble.
I mean, it's going to be extremely difficult to enforce anything like that unless you've got somebody going around, because, you know, Jason and what's your name? Ashley, can't be out in a car all day long looking at every vendor that's in here and how they're parking. I
Well,
mean,
Linda can give out the rules when they come through.
they can do,
And they
she
have
can
to
certainly do
understand,
that,
if
but
we make rules, those are gonna be the rules, and we are gonna have police in here, once or twice a week. But just so they know that we're watching them. But I mean, to have 2 cars parked on 2 different sides of the street makes no sense at all.
You're right. A lot of the problems, though, the police aren't going to touch.
I know.
There's a, and I hope the person is not here, but there's a work trailer and a car parked in the driveway of a house on Sunset that's been there probably daily. I don't know if they stay overnight because they don't have me down that way. But it's dead square across the sidewalk and all the way out to the.
So it's been there for a week or more.
Yeah, and, I mean, we clearly have a rule against parking across the sidewalk, and as a matter of fact, so does Hillsborough County.
Yeah.
But without, it has no teeth if we just say, you can't park across the sidewalk, and by the way, we're not looking. I think we need to develop some kind of an internal way of handling that stuff, whether it be just notices on the windshields or whatever it might happen to be.
If we can create a ticket that if we have patrols that is a warning, and like I say, once you see where those, you know, what kind of issues you keep coming in, you can decide as a board how you want to handle each one.
Yeah.
I think the first step is to just, you know, like I said, put a warning on there.
Yep.
We know that this is in violation of the ordinance, and if we're doing patrols with deputies through here, give them a list of items to look for.
Yeah.
At a minimum of 4 hours each time they're here, is what they're gonna be here. So while they're here, they can, you know, as long as we give them a list of things to look for, that's what they'll look for. They'll cruise around.
I mean, it's not going to be easy, because we have residents who live here and have lived here for many, many years. There's one particular one down here on Silver, who has a very short driveway and has a truck. And there's no way, and the truck won't go in the garage, and there's no way that they can put the truck in the street, so it finishes up going all the way across the sidewalk. Difficult to manage that, particularly because they have a short driveway, and then you go down Seneca, and they've got driveways as long as this ball in some cases, and they've got, you know, they can get 5 cars in there, but see,
We've wrestled with that a couple times
Yeah.
at finding a suspension, but the fact of the matter is, they had a short driveway when they bought the house.
that's absolutely true, and the documents were written before they bought the house, and that's what's written in there.
Right. I mean, can they park in the street? Could park in the street, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you can also, you and I talked about this yesterday, that, you know, theoretically, you're not allowed to park a car in your driveway if you haven't got 2 cars in the
You
garage.
have to look at the rules, right?
If you look at the
Is
rules.
that in there?
Yeah,
I missed that page.
Well, I don't want it to be a police state. I
No,
mean,
no,
everybody
no,
makes a
okay.
mistake. But it seems to me that by the time, well, what do we measure grass, by the inch? If we measure violations by the inch, by the time you get to an inch of violation, somebody ought to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
I think if we start out with vendors and really concentrate on getting the vendors and the ancillary residents, but I mean, I think the vendors have to be our first thing, because they're the ones who cause the most trouble. Not that there aren't some residents that do, but I mean, through that process and talking about it at board meetings and notices going out, I think the residents will understand better too.
Then the only way to do that is make up a sheet that says, these are the rules, and give it to Linda.
Yeah.
And every truck that comes in gets a copy of
I
it.
think
Because you can't ask the residents to self-police.
No.
Some will, some won't. Some people are too shy to do that. It's not a question of.
I think you're 100% right. Linda needs to get that out as they come in, and they have to know that those are the rules, or, you know, they were going to have trouble coming in here the next time,
Yep.
if they're on the list of offenders.
Yep. And then, any one of us, if we know the guys have received the paper, and we see them run, we can report them to Linda or to Jason.
And if any of you guys go by a vendor truck that's right over the sidewalk, make them move it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, we were just talking, when we do our drive around,
Yeah.
to check for violations, we look for it, but it's obviously, we're not doing that every single day. We're not out looking for violations. every
No,
day.
but if you see one, just make the guy put his thing on the windshield. Okay, anybody else?
While we're on the subject of parking, may I ask a question? What is the policy for parking in this parking lot with campers and boats and trailers? Is there a time limit? 1 day, 2 days? Is there a cost for
They
it?
have to get approval from the manager to park overnight.
And-
And they can get a sticker that they stick on the dashboard,
And they're allowed to stay how long?
usually 1 day, isn't it?
It depends on the, it depends on the circumstances. We've issued up to 5-day passes if somebody has a specific reason and they come and pre-arrange that, because what we want to do is check if there's any events going on that would affect. So make sure that we're not having a vehicle like that parked out there during, say, Labor Day.
Memorial Day, like it happened this year.
Right, which those particular ones parked there without getting, and then the process of finding them and figuring out who it belongs to, we go through that process, and we send it, we send them a letter. We try to reach out to them if we can call them, but generally speaking, 24 hours. And we've created a laminated card to put on their window that says, you're in violation. That way we can at least get into the building and say, listen, if you're gonna park this here overnight, or for any length of time, you need to come get
What would be the circumstance to stay 5 days?
if someone was moving into the community.
Yeah.
If somebody was, like for instance, if you're leaving for the summer and you have your RV that you're packing up and you're gonna have it here for 3 days while you get ready to go, and then you're gonna head out and you come to us and we don't have any events going on, we would issue you a 3-day pass so that you could, because you obviously can't park it in your driveway and it's better than being on the streets. As long as we don't have an event that would affect for parking wise, then we would allow that. If there was an event, we would say, no, you can only have a day or two, or here's the days you can use. But yeah, that would be the reasoning for it. Never just, hey, I want to park it there instead of paying for storage. But if you did have something that was, like I say, somebody's leaving for the summer and they want to bring their RV from their storage facility so they can get it ready to go, they need 2 or 3 days and we don't have an event going on, we've issued a pass. Somebody's moving into the community, same thing.
So what do you guys do about these people who don't get the pass that are out there? Because, I've counted them out there as long as 8 days.
You're absolutely right, and we've searched them out, and if you bring a vehicle in and park it there, if you were to personally do that, how would I know it's you?
License
Do
plate.
you got the license plate on the vehicle that should match?
Sure, but I'm not with Hillsborough County. I can personally, but I'm not gonna ask my wife to look up the tag and the registration. It's not as easy.
Come on, you have some connections.
I know, I'm not getting my connections in trouble.
What about towing?
No.
What if we had a sign that said overnight parking is not allowed without a permit?
There's state guidelines for that, and if you decided and put in the governing documents, that's the first step, is it has to be in the governing documents. Second thing is it has to be properly posted. You have to post the towing company that's used, phone number, contacts for them. Because if you pull into a parking lot and it says if you park here, it'll be towed at your expense, not the legal way to do it. That's a scare tactic to keep you from doing it, and that's great. But if you were actually to get towed by them based on the state statutes, they would be responsible for your tow bill. If you don't do it right, then we become responsible for the tow bill. And it's not something that's impossible, but it is a process that generally starts in a community. It has to start with your governing documents. It has to be voted into your governing documents.
We'll skip that step.
That's what I say, it's a little
You
more.
also don't want a tow truck towing a car with a 40-foot trailer on behind it out of the parking lot. It'll do more damage than
Right.
anything.
All
When
right.
you're talking about bringing in these patrols, are we paying for that?
Yes.
We are.
And how much is that?
Depends on the length of term. It's per deputy per hour. They have a set rate with $30 an hour. we would
Or
never
at
schedule.
least 4 hours at a time, you said,
4 hours
3
at a
days
time.
a week.
That's gonna vary, kind of keep it at a varied rate and frequency so that we can see how it's working. If it's working really well, we can step it up, but it's something that we've looked into, and as far as the cost of it, it's not extremely expensive, but it is a cost that will be incurred by the HOA, so it's something that we have to keep track of and keep an eye on.
And I know y'all commented about the bikers this morning, but when we were at the 9/11 celebration back there at the gazebo, cars are still, with all these people even standing on the sidewalk, 2 cars, coming up Sunset, turning left onto the main boulevard. They might have slowed down, they did not stop.
That's exactly why our enforcement policy. All right, the other thing is, yes?
I have
Jen.
2 comments. One about the license plates. When we were issued our tag for our car to get through the gate, we had to give them our license number. So you can check a car if you still have that
And
list.
sure, and we do go through that process and reach out to the people. It's not, sometimes people don't answer their phone and they don't respond. We don't have, even if we get it, all we can tell you is, please move the vehicle. At this point, that's the extent of our.
You don't have
authority.
any other, we don't have any other legal.
Right, we have no other legal means. Now, it can go to the board, and that's one of those things where, the process that it has to go to. The best remedy is if they answer their phone and they say, okay, we'll have it out tomorrow. Well, in the meantime, come get a pass, please, and put the pass in the vehicle. And that's the route
The other thing I wanted to say is the gym is getting really crowded with equipment. Is there room for another piece?
No,
I don't think so either.
it's not safe now.
I mean, you've got that whole line of treadmills and steppers, and there's not room to put it there.
That's something that you guys.
We'll look into that before
Yeah.
we vote on it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Could the yoga room not be used, or could something be moved over there?
No, no, that's used for ping pong too. You can't, oh yeah.
Yeah,
Ping
that's-
pong, it's supposed to be an exercise.
Yoga.
building
Is
up
there any
there.
equipment that is not being used that can be deleted?
That, we'll have to look at, I don't think so. There's
So
most
if you ask people, they would probably say, take this one away, and then the next day somebody's gonna come in and say, where's this?
Where, yeah. Okay, well, we'll look into that before we vote on it.
Another question though, on the sheriff thing, did they become our employees? Do we have to do W-2s, 1099s and all that kind of stuff?
So they are W-9,
Nine.
just like a vendor. So it's treated the same way a vendor. It would be basically at the end of each week or at the end of each period of time that we set aside with so basically I'm working with 2 particular deputies. That way we don't have random people coming in and we have to worry about that. Because we do pay them directly, we're looking at 2. They come in, they get their W-9 at the end of each week or whatever we agree to with terms with them, they'll invoice based on their hours. We'll pay them, and then at the end of the year, just like any other vendor, they would receive a W-9 from us.
That makes it a lot easier than
Yeah.
And
withholding
Castle
and all
will
that.
go to that.
Oh, yeah, it's just like any other vendor that's out there.
Has your wife said anything to you about whether or not they keep track of which deputies work in which place?
Oh, I know, there's a person who's in charge of that, and I've been dealing with him.
Okay,
So then you get, basically what happens from there is they either assign you a lead or you request it, which I requested a lead because I know the guys in this area.
the reason I ask is I grew up umpiring baseball and softball and crap like that. And those people, those of us who did refereeing for schools, the assigner would always keep track of who's been where so that they don't earn over $600 from a particular school.
Right.
And then they don't get a 1099.
Right, and that's something that they can decide, and right now I've talked to 2 deputies, and they both agree, they're not worried about the 1099, because to them it would be more beneficial to have the work.
Okay.
Now, if it was a matter of this being like a onesie or twosie thing here or there, yeah, they could move around, and they work other off-duty, they know that this is not. So they have different off-duties to where they get hand cash, and then they have off-duties like this where they get, so there's certain people take these on, and that's why it's better to go out and pick who you want. That way you 1099 or you W-9 them, and then they, 1099 at the end of the year. They're gonna be the only two that come in here. They'll work we'll set the shift as to what we want. They'll work it amongst themselves, and then at the end of each period of time, we designate, they'll invoice for that.
Good. That makes it easy for us.
Right, easier to track.
But they do have to submit an actual invoice. They can't come in and just have a.
Right, it's like a time card. They submit a time card and then, and we'll create a invoice for, we'll create a sheet that they can fill out at the end of each week of what time they're here. They'll also, and they log into their computer as well, and they log in, they'll sign in at the front gate so that they know when they come and when they go. The off-duty deputy that handles off-duty is to make sure that, because you can see, imagine the exposure the county would be under if there was something going on with deputies getting off-duty time. So they're very strict on how it's handled. Sometimes they have events like the wild game cookouts. Those guys get paid cash. They say, hey, we want 40 people, and they go out there. They don't know what they're going to make or not make, and they hand them cash. No big deal. But this is something to where it's an exposure to the county, so they make sure that there's a long application, and there's several pages go with this that you have to send in. Both sides exchange documentation. It's very well tracked as to what's happening. There's even a small fee. It's very minimal, but there's a small fee like that we pay to the county.
Yeah, it's like $12.
Yeah, it's like $12, just because somebody has to track it, so you're paying for that time for them to track that as well.
Okay, courts. Okay, where we are with the courts.
So we finally got a quote that came in, which doesn't, based on the conversation we had when we were on the courts, it didn't quite meet what we had asked for. So I'm trying to get Matt to come back out and go through the estimate that he provided, because it didn't quite meet what we had asked for. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, based on what we talked
If he has
about.
stuff in there that nobody asked for,
Right.
and he doesn't address the safety issue of the courts, which was the main reason to start this process to begin with.
Now, I did see the one though where he talks about the compaction and how the recompacting of the court and how that would alleviate the bumps coming up. That was in there. The biggest issue I was seeing was how the refinishing of the courts wasn't really what we had asked for. I mean, it was just a different idea completely from what we had asked for. So that's something that needed to be addressed. But I saw, and we can look at it later. I saw there where the compaction was discussed as far as the base, coming in and compacting it with a roller vibrator for however many times or however period of time. And then once that's done, it's obviously going to break up the court, something he would have to come back and refinish it. But that was the portion that
Yeah, I
he
think
said.
the issue is he gave two bids. One didn't address enough.
Right.
One addressed too much.
Right,
So
yes.
can we get this guy back here
Yes.
and get a good bid? And can we get some other bids?
If-
And can we address this quick? I know you guys are busy and you keep telling me that, but we started this process June 1st. And now
Sure.
we have a guy that gave us two incorrect bids, and it's 3.5 months later.
I've reached out to 3 other vendors and gotten no reply from 3 other vendors.
May I reach out?
Absolutely.
May I, Wayne?
Yeah, just coordinate with him, so we know
Okay.
what
Yeah,
they
'cause
said.
I've called 3 vendors and had no reply. This guy has replied to me every time, but it's been a mixed batch of what we get in return from him. The only other caveat in that, it was he's looking into the bocce as well, but at this point, we're gonna have to look at, if we can find other vendors to look at it as well. So-
Yeah, we'll have to do that because it needs to get done.
There's a huge problem in Hillsborough County right now, finding vendors to do anything. With all the construction that's going on and what everybody's used up. And, you make a call even for regular work in a house sometimes. You call around 3 or 4 different vendors till you find somebody who's got the time to come and do it. It's a big problem. And it's not for the one to try, it's just finding people to come out and do the job. I mean, you see what we went through with the ponds. And now that we've got somebody, we can't tie him down to when he'll do the job. So, it's fine to have a quote to give out a contract, but we don't even know
They
when
are
he's going to
terrible
do the
about
work.
showing up to do
But
the work.
I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to call the vendors, 2 more. I'm willing to meet with them and I will coordinate it with Jason. I don't want any of the responsibility myself. I'm not on the board and I don't work here. But I'm willing to do the work to get this accomplished. And all I need is your blessing.
You have that.
Thank
have
you.
it.
Yes.
Then you gotta get them to show up, so
I
that's what they're
will.
saying.
Oh, speaking of Remsen, where are we with getting him nailed down? At least get a contract signed.
Same place we were, we contacted him.
I reached out to him twice this week, I haven't had a response yet.
I know where he lives.
Email and call.
He lives on Remsen Lane, and if you look it up in the Google, there is no such thing.
We're on a once-a-day call to him right now. And that, honestly, we put him on a once-a-day call. We've got he gave us the final estimate for the meeting. Since then, we've been able to reach him one other time. He said he's got projects he has to finish before he can start this one. He's looking at the end of October, beginning of November. And we're trying to get him at least a little more locked down, at least within a 2-week window, so that we can start the herbicide. And I talked to the vendor, the other. Logan, to do the herbicide yesterday. He needs to do 3 applications, so each application needs 14 days in between. So that's 4
6
weeks
weeks.
right there. Yeah, 6 weeks overall, 4 weeks right there. So we're trying to nail that down, but Remsen has been not a lot of response from him, other than the one we were able to get a hold of him one time.
All right, keep trying. Okay, anybody got anything else?
Yeah, I want to say something. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, when you brought up the budget, that reminded me about the asphalt getting replaced or on Shell. They were gonna start in February, then we were gonna wait till the faulty money came in. Now the faulty money's here. Where's replacing the asphalt at right now?
I think we have to get that guy back in here that made the presentation.
We talked about that last week.
Yeah, and we need to have him do another survey of the community and give us what he thinks needs to get done and when. I think Shell was on one of the things.
Did we
looked at.
get 3 quotes on that, or are we just taking one guy's?
Now, once we decide the scope of work, we'll have to get 2 more quotes if we can.
Okay, I might know somebody else that could do that.
Whether or not exactly what Shell needs or what any of the roads need, we'll have to get, an expert opinion on that.
Right.
Anytime you have a vendor like that you know, just bring me a contact for him, so that because I create a vendor list for him. Or for any project that's going on, we create a vendor list, and I'll add him to the vendor list.
Did Bill Cable get removed from the vendors list?
He's not being, we found that we have another vendor that we're reaching out to, because Bill Cable.
Well, I wouldn't care if you have another one or not, he needs to be taken off.
Okay, well,
Because he
we're
does
not,
a Band-Aid, and it costs people a lot of money.
we personally are not gonna use him anymore, as far as the HOA.
Mhm.
As far as there's some residents that love him, and they use him for stuff, and he might be responsive to them, but he hasn't been responsive to us, so we're using a different vendor now. Wayne sent us another contact, we used him, and he
The
forwarded
guy
it.
who was in here. The guy
And one
who was in
last
here.
question real quick, is anybody helping Brooke now that Heather has left?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just think she's had 6 months training, and this is a pretty large community for lifestyle events, and
Okay,
she may need
She
some
will
help.
do well. Well, she's
No,
getting,
yeah.
yeah, she's getting help. She's getting a lot of help with it. We're reorganizing the staffing as well to make sure that she is successful. She will not have the same responsibilities Heather had.
okay. John, you got something about,
Yeah, I just want to talk for a second about the meeting that we had last night, the pond committee meeting. I was extremely impressed by this young lady that came from Hillsborough County to talk to us about the health of our ponds and different things along that line. And she spent a lot of time talking about the different plants that would work and things like that. And I know Ron was interested in that side of it. The only thing I know about plants are some are blue and some are green. I don't know. Okay. But she also talked about the health of our ponds. And that's when my ears perked up, because what she talked about was the fact that the way almost all developments are handled around here, all of the water that we use outside the house ends up in our ponds. So when we wash our car in the driveway, all of the soap and the water and everything else drains down to the gutter and into the pond, whatever pond you're on. And she talked about 3 or 4 different things that were very dangerous for our ponds. I talked with her afterwards and asked her if there were other things that she hadn't mentioned, and she kind of looked at me and I said, what about water filtration systems? And she said, oh, those are the worst, because they're 100% salt water. And even if the water doesn't make it to the drain, the salt just, when the water evaporates, the salt just sits there. And the next time it rains, or the next time you power wash your driveway, which she says I hate, all that stuff is going in the ponds. Okay, here's what makes me think that this is important. We're spending a lot of money in the next few months on a couple of ponds that desperately need some help. What we're learning from this process is that this is not a one-time event. As the old saying goes, and she said it on one of her slides, the day a pond is built is the day it starts to die. That's the way they work. I think, and I mentioned this just to bring it to the attention of the board so that we can decide whether we want to do anything about this or not. I think we need to do one of two things. We either need to look into how to minimize the amount of contaminants that go into our ponds, or we need to realize that we need to put more money into our reserves for pond maintenance in the future. A lot of the money that we're spending right now on pond maintenance came to us as a surprise. And I have a really strong feeling that in the future, that surprise will grow. So I think we should spend a little time looking at whether or not we can do anything about the amount of contaminants that go into the ponds in the first place. But I think long range, the important thing is to seriously look at our reserves to see if there's enough money in those, or will be enough money in those when the other ponds need it. That's it.
Just to underline what you said, we have a huge problem right now, and the landscaper is working on it to see whether there's something that we can do. But right now, our pump system clogs every 3 days because there's so much muck in Pond 8 that as the irrigation system sucks the water out of the pond, it's sucking all the debris with it. And effectively what's happening is it's a self-cleaning pump, but the self-cleaning isn't working adequately enough. And after 3 days, the pump stops because it's completely clogged up. They have to take it apart, clean it with high-pressure hoses, and put it back together again. Now they're trying an exercise today for the next 3 days to see what happens. But this is all part and parcel of the same problem, because the pond is so full of contaminants that we've got a problem. Now, one of the things that's been suggested, we've already voted on this and approved, is that we need to get the bubblers into Pond 8 ASAP. So we should consider perhaps putting some bubblers in down the south end or the east end towards the gazebo now, lay out the electrics and whatever so that we can put the other ones in without any additional cost, but to get some of those bubblers put in right now so that we can start to improve the quality of the water, at least on the east end of the pond. Obviously, we don't want to do it where we're going to dig it all up, but that's something that we really need to look at, because, you know, John is absolutely correct. There's tremendous issues with our ponds. Pond 8 is somewhat unique, and she mentioned it last night, that this is a very unique community in that regard. Most communities don't function the way ours does, that we pump drinking water into the pond to use for irrigation.
And she did not use the word unique as a compliment.
She didn't think it was a particularly good system, but it is what it is, and that's what we've got, so we have to live with it. Just a minute, Louise. So we need to really study this situation and take note of what our pond people tell us, and keeping the ponds as clean as possible. One of the things that she mentioned last night that's been mentioned before, and we put out a notice 3 or 4 years ago about people washing cars. One of the things she said, which isn't really practical from our point of view, if you're going to allow people to wash their cars, tell them to wash them on the grass, because the grass loves the soap. But the ponds don't. Not easy to do, but perhaps there's a way that you know, we could insist that people spray afterwards and push the soap onto the grass rather than just letting it wash out into the street. Something of that nature, so that we can at least help a little bit, because as she rightly said, every single drop of water that goes into the street finishes up in the pond at some point in time or other.
I would suspect that would be, if you could really get people to do it, that would be an excellent thing to say about power washing in general, because all of that stuff, as the water evaporates, just sits in your driveway. And when the guy comes along and power washes, everything goes into the gutters. So I imagine power washing is probably one of the worst things.
Yeah, but, you know, and we're pushing that now to be
Yeah,
done
exactly,
every 1 or 2
exactly.
years, and maybe we should.
Maybe we can push them to go left and right instead of up and
Well,
down.
you know, but I don't know what they only use high pressure water, they don't use soap, no point there, with the grass was the soap, not the other.
Right, but that soap,
contaminants.
my point is that soap has been there since the last time you washed
Well,
it.
that's true too, but, you know, maybe
bubbles up.
we should rethink this power washing situation and not insist on it being done so regularly because of the contaminants that it's pushing into the ponds. And so, you know, it's gonna cost us money one way or the other, so, needs to be looked at. Sorry.
Okay.
I'd like to make a comment on that. I wash my car in the driveway maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 4 times, and I use a biodegradable detergent. How about the fish and birds? They put a lot more contaminant in these ponds
course,
than
you're
I could ever do.
You're absolutely right.
So why are we worried about people washing their cars in their driveway a little bit?
Well, only because she mentioned it last night as a significant problem. And, you know, this is a woman who works 24/7 on ponds and waterways in Hillsborough counties or for the university, so she knows what she's talking about. So if she figures that that's an issue, then it's an issue. You know, we're not the
That's
experts,
not
we're
an
only repeating what we were told last night. But your point is valid, of course. The birds, the fish particularly, that's why we're having this fishing, you know, we have this guy come in and take some of the fish out every so often to
But
reduce
there's
that.
plenty left in there that'll do a lot more. One fish will probably put in more contaminant into that water than my washing the car for 2
Maybe
or
so,
3 years.
maybe so.
Well, we're not talking
Fine.
about,
That guy still fishing in here?
the whole idea, Don, is to reduce the total contaminants of when
Yeah, but-
we have slightly more control over you washing your car than we do over a bird flying over the pond.
But they do a lot more damage.
Maybe so, but the point is they don't do all the damage. We look at the damage that we can control.
Louise, you wanted to say
It's like
something?
what percentage
Well,
of that
one comment I wanted to make when he was talking about the contaminants. We have a wonderful opportunity, once we do these Pond 8 and Canal 7, to do that 10-foot barrier
Yeah.
that she talked about, so we can keep the grass away from the water. It'll have a bed of 10 feet of wildflowers that we don't have to take care of, that's our own, natural, and it would look nice. But we have the opportunity, once we do this to those 2 ponds, to plant that properly.
Well, we've already started doing that, obviously, with developing with the no mow area along the ponds. And I understand what she's saying, that a 10-foot border is optimum. Whether or not we could do a full 10 feet,
Right.
who knows? But, anything helps. So I think it's something we need to look into.
Yeah.
The only reason I even mentioned it is because the lady was extremely vocal about how you protect your ponds.
Yeah.
And we just I don't think we do enough to do that. That's-
Well, and she talked a lot about the pH level, which
Yeah.
we're gonna get a handle on that too.
And it's not a question of washing your car, it's a question of everything we do should have at least been, the health of the pond should have at least been considered.
Yeah.
Whether we choose to pay, as the old oil filter commercial is, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. Okay? Whether we decide to make some really tough rules that keeps phosphorus and nitrogen out of the ponds, or whether we decide to say, let's put a couple $100,000 more into the reserves, so that when we do have to fix the ponds, the money's there. I'm not suggesting one way or the other, and perhaps the truth is someplace in the middle, because as Don says, we can't control everything, because what we can control is whether or not we have the fortitude and the money to keep the ponds healthy, because the death of a pond is the death of this community.
One of the things that, again, we put into the budget for the remediation of the 2 ponds, but it's something that we've recognized for a long time we ought to be doing, and we've tried to do it on Pond 6, is to put more plants into the pond, because the plants eat a lot of this crap, and it's excuse my language, that goes into the pond. So we, it's something that we're very much aware of and that we really need to do. Again, it's all a question of money.
Right.
You could spend $100,000 easy putting plants in around our ponds, and we just don't have, Sarah just looked at me. We don't have $100,000 to do that. But, if we spend $10,000 or $15,000 a year putting plants in, that's each year is a step in the right direction. Right.
Joe, if you would.
My questions all deal with the back pool. Do we have a procedure for the down-to-earth workers that they may only use those restrooms?
All right, let's table that one, one second. We'll get to that, but just go ahead.
There's a camera that blinks in the center top of the wall.
Video camera?
I don't know what it is.
That's the one connected to the front desk here.
And what do they do with it?
They use it to watch who's in the pond, and if there's a problem, they can talk to them.
Okay.
It's a ring system.
Number 3.
Yeah, that's right.
Over the weekends, the world goes to that pool with their grandchildren, their friends, their aunts, their uncles, and there's no policing of the security in that pool. As the weather gets cooler, more probably will attend. But over a week, if you count the 4 exercise classes that are there, as well as the normal flow of traffic, there's almost 200 and some odd visits to that pool per week. And it's just out of control. And I don't have a solution for it because I know they can't do anything about it. But we need...
residents or visitors being the problem?
Residents are fine. It's the visitors that the residents bring.
Okay.
And unfortunately, sometimes they have their drink, they have their beer, and they're just... We have pool rules that simply aren't enforced, I guess is the best way to put it.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I don't have a solution to do that. And I know they don't have the money to increase the staff. But I just want you aware.
Are we not?
Yeah, we are.
We are going to increase our staff. And as far as the first thing that you brought up is the use of the facilities by the landscaping and the other vendor. You have a proposal that we're going to talk about Monday night to redo the area out here, to put in a storage area for the landscape vendor, whoever it is, and move our dumpster over, and a secure area that will be able to hold a porta potty. And the landscape people will be happy to use that. And then-
I think you may have misunderstood me. I think the down-to-earth staff are probably the nicest people in here.
They're good.
Better than the residents. They are happy, they are polite, they are endearing, but to have to use the restroom, they don't have a pass. So to treat them like third world citizens, we make them take a bamboo pole, stick it through the fence to hit a button to open the gate.
I thought they did have a pass.
Some have a pass, they all should have a pass.
They do have a pass. A pass. Well,
They have 3 passes that they
Well, they-
share.
It was set up in such a way that they were supposed to when they wanted to use the bathroom, to take the truck, the little cart that they've got where the pass is attached to, and go and use that. But obviously that's not necessarily working because
Well-
they might not be in the same place as the cart.
All of us who live in that pool welcome them to use the restrooms. Irene's doing such a better job than she was in maintaining them. But I just feel terrible. Now, the other thing is, if I'm in the pool and I'm doing my whatever, you have to get out of the pool to let them in some cases.
that's a pass thing.
Yeah, we'll get with
We'll
them.
look into that.
So why don't we just give them all passes?
Well,
I mean,
there
they're
was a big-
people.
There was a big to-do about that when we talked about it last time, about having too many just free passes floating all around this community. I mean, what's the sense of having these passes for the residents to control who goes in and who goes out, and you have
Individual gates.
too damn many of them floating around that can go from person to person? I'm not saying what I think about it. I mean, there was a big hue and a cry about that. when we talked about giving them passes in the first place. That's why one of the reasons we want to redo this area out here, so that there is a designated place and we don't have to worry about that.
Well, what about a punch keyboard, just for this down to earth?
Well, it'd be a lot simpler.
Punching
to
in
give them more
numbers.
passes which will work only for the back pool.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it doesn't allow them to get into the community or anything like that.
We just feel like they're being treated like third world country people.
I see what you mean. Can we do that?
And it's a disgrace, in my opinion.
We'll try that. Meanwhile, we're gonna go ahead and vote on doing this thing because it entails more than just the.
Okay,
formality,
sounds
store
good.
And everything.
My final comment.
Yes, sir.
The back pool is disgusting. It has so much mold and lime on the chairs. The buoy itself is infected, and the reason is no one is visiting the back pool and looking. And that is the same case for almost every asset toward the rear of the community. The nature trail, we all understand, but we need to step up the supervision of these two facilities.
I agree with you.
And it's not being done.
I disagree.
That's fine, you can disagree, I'm not talking to you.
All right, but I'm gonna give you.
You're not a member of the board.
All right, but I'm gonna give you a resolution anyway.
Go.
We've got a new vendor coming in because the previous vendor was in over his head, and he quit the job so that we could bring in a new pool vendor. That was the issue back there.
No, you're wrong.
No,
The furniture has nothing to do with the pool.
right, but there's
Is
not.
he gonna power wash the furniture and the buoy?
No, but we go back there.
So that's not a resolution.
So then we have to purchase new equipment,
Look, if you're ready to purchase gym equipment, because 12 people asked for it,
The board is.
I'm just saying that back pool needs to be treated as the front pool, and there's no reason there's all this mold and lime back there. That's all.
I have a comment, though, about the camera. I'm not sure which, there is two fixtures up there. One blinks and one is stationary.
Right.
However, I have asked this question more than one time to the front staff. And I was told that there's no way we are going to monitor that back pool because we're busy on these computers doing other things. And only one computer at the front desk, now, you tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I was told by your staff, Jason. Only one computer at the front desk records what's going on at the back pool, and we can't go on there and watch it. The reason the cameras are there, this is what I was told, is so we can review the tape if somebody makes a complaint. Residents should not have to make a complaint against other residents or their guests. The staff should be monitoring the pool.
Can we put them on it?
But the back pool has cameras looking at the geothermal and looking at the pool, and there's one additional camera which is connected to a computer at the front desk. To review the videos on the cameras is an extremely time-consuming process. Believe me, we've had to do it on a number of occasions when there have been complaints, and it takes literally hours. And that's not, something that people can do. So it really is a situation when you go do it when you have to. It's not a question that we go do it every day just because we want to see whether people are behaving themselves. But the idea of putting that ring camera in at the time it was done, which was 6 or 9 months ago, was so that people, that we could have a camera being watched, so that, because we were having problems with people who misbehaved themselves. So Jason, if it's not being done that way, it needs to be reinstigated, that there is visibility of the back pool through that ring system on a regular basis, so that we don't have problems there if what has been said
Jason,
is correct.
the
We
new
don't
pool
we seem
vendor,
to have problems
is
there.
that a couple?
No, it's,
Because I met them, and they seemed very, very nice, and he was asking all the right questions so he can clean the tile. So it's great. I've never had a complaint about the pool maintenance.
well, we had an issue back there with that, and not, it's been over the last couple of weeks, has become, the service went down pretty sharply. So then we found out he was in way over his head. Not just from here, several communities, we all got a notification like last Saturday that he would no longer be coming. There was a guy that he worked with, he kind of handed it off, hoping that that guy would get to work but they came in and they've done a really good job since. And I think we'll see a marked improvement as far as how the pools are maintained. As far as the chairs back there, the discussion was made, now we did put we put in a few items out back there, the same as what was done up here. When we ordered umbrellas, we ordered umbrellas for back there, we ordered umbrellas for here. We put in the picnic tables back there. They were brought here in the beginning because of an event, and then they were moved back there. The discussion of new furniture has been made, because as you know, being back there, the mold has been on there for so long that it's kind of worn into it, and it's pretty much, I would say, like the vinyl that's on there has been damaged, whatever that rubber material is. We have a lot of the same issue up here, but it's not, obviously not as much. You're absolutely right. The cleaning, it gets cleaned back there once
A year,
and compared to what you have.
once
up
a
here.
year.
And that's something that I'm putting pressure on to make sure it gets done more frequently, but the supervision of it is more difficult. It's not impossible, but more difficult. But that is something we're trying to improve, and I've talked to Irene about it. We're worked on the bathrooms. We have more people stopping by there to make sure it's happening. The chairs and such back there, when I went back and looked at them, it was like some of the ones up here, to where it has sat on there for so long that it's just kind of embedded into it. And even when we pressure wash it, because John did pressure wash them, and it still looked the same when he was done as it did when he started. And that's the issue with it back there. The problem is overall, between that pool and this pool, the furniture is kind of at a point we need to start looking at whether new furniture is needed for the pools, and what kind of money we want to invest into that.
Well, I personally appreciate all the upgrades. The umbrellas are terrific, the picnic tables are the best things you've ever done. But it's a health risk at this point, so we need to move on it.
And we may have to minimize and take some of the, if there's better furniture up here, I'll go take a look at it and see what we can do to make it.
But I think our overall policy is, and I think we started this with the umbrella, when we make upgrades here, the same upgrades we're gonna make.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been great, we appreciate
We'll
it.
do the back pool, we'll do the front pool. The pools are the pools that are in one pot. And I think we started out with the umbrella, so we intend to continue that philosophy.
And
There's a lot of people
everyone
that use it.
loves it.
I was gonna do that with my brother-in-law, there was only one other person there, and then we had the whole pool to ourselves for an hour. It was very nice. Okay, one more question. Bruce?
You mentioned the pumps, Pond 8, sucking up debris. We were warned about this a couple of years ago. If that water level got too low and as the silt built up, that exactly was going to happen. Now, the woman, I didn't attend the meeting, but she said unique in that we're using drinking water basically to fill the pond. Have we revisited the possibility of the recyclable water line that Hillsborough County has that ends, I don't know, someplace maybe up on Big Bend, that they didn't extend it down here, but it's something that can be used, and it may help us to alleviate keeping the pond level higher, so that we can, without greater expense or running into a swift mud restriction on our allocation, to alleviate that problem.
I think the last time we looked at that, the cost of redoing this system to the other water and getting the pipe down here was insurmountable.
Okay.
And Hillsborough County didn't want to bring it down here when this place was built. I'm sure they still don't want to bring it down here today.
And knowing the way Swiftmud thinks, as far as they're concerned, any water is water. And it all essentially comes from the same source. It might get used 3 or 4 times, but they're concerned about the overall use of water in the area. And my suspicion is that they're not going to let you make it any, the level any higher just because it's recycled water as opposed to water from the aquifer.
Okay.
Bruce, Ron might have some more information on this. She didn't say that we use drinking water in the pond.
She did actually
She said-
say that it's
she
potable
called
water,
it
which it
potable.
is, because it's coming from the
Potable
aquifer.
water.
Potable
But it
water
comes from the aquifer.
from the aquifer.
It doesn't come from your sink,
No, I understand
okay?
that. I know.
So we are using the cheapest water available to us. And so far, there's enough to go around. I don't know what's gonna happen 5 years from now when everybody else starts using the same aquifer.
Well,
That
see,
scares the life
therein
out of
lies
me,
the
but there's
problem.
not a
Big
darn thing
pothole.
we can do
When
about
we're all
that.
gone here, there's going to be more cactus plants. I can guarantee you.
One other comment, if I may. When you guys start to do the budget, Ron, I guess this applies to you more so, we really should look at and make a determination on whether the nature trail is a nature trail or a wetland.
It's wet.
Because the maintenance of it is not consistent, and if that's what we want, it could be a way to save money.
I think it is a wetland, it's denoted as that. That's
But we
why
call
can't
it a
rid of
nature trail, Del Webb advertises it as a nature trail, we have signs up. If
It's a
that's the
wetland
case,
trail.
we need to treat it like a nature trail. If we want to say it's a wetland, then the signs need to come down.
Yeah, that's a good point, Joe. I don't think anybody's ready to believe that that's the route we have to take yet, but I can't disagree with you that we're moving in that direction.
Well, Down to Earth just can't, they have a lot of trouble maintaining it because it fills with water. The tree that was cut down on my property is growing back, so that wasn't dead. If it's a wetland, then let's get some money savings from Down to Earth back for
Well-
maintaining it, just
Yeah,
let it go.
The problem you've got there, Joe, is that if you don't do some sort of maintenance in there, it's going to overgrow. And it's going to spread into the rest of the community, and we can't, that's even more expensive to do. So, the fact that they can't get in there now because of the water in there, that is correct. We're not allowed to do anything about
Right.
it. That's what it's designed for. But during the winter months, they can certainly clean it up, and so that by the time we get to next summer, it's clean. And then next summer, if we have as wet a summer as we have this year, and this is an exceptional year from that aspect. Yes, we've had water in there before, no question, but not as bad as it has been this year. But it is what it is, and there isn't very much we can do about it. I mean, I think we were all calmed by Pulte, by calling it a nature trail and advertising it as such, because that's simply not what it is. It's, yes, you can walk in there if you don't mind getting bitten 5 million times by the mosquitoes as you walk through, especially at this time of the year. So it's not fun to go in there, and I certainly won't walk in there anymore unless I have to. But it is what it is, and there is nothing we can do about it. It's a typical developer ploy to get people to buy. And it's unfortunate for those people who live there.
Yeah, and it worked.
Who object to the fact that it's water and everything else, but it is what it is. We've called Swiftmud. I have a transcript of the telephone conversation that took place between Harold and Swiftmud at the time, which is very clear what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do.
Well, I think the decision we made to keep the exterior of the nature trail cut and maintained was terrific. I agree the center should just be allowed to go.
Within reason.
I just hope you have a discussion about the care and create a standard for how it should look, what should be done.
Well, that's going to have to be part of our contract negotiations that are coming up in the scope of work.
Right.
Because that will greatly impact the monthly fee we're willing to accept.
Good.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all. You have one more question?
I do, on our flood insurance, because we're in hurricane season, I understand insurance has just switched companies, or, so do we have enough coverage here to cover everything?
Yes, we just renewed with our flood insurance.
Why did we switch insurance companies?
We got a new package policy to save money and give better coverage.
We increased the coverage and decreased the annual premium.
Can we see that contract?
Sure.
Any contracts we have, you can come to the office and see, just let us know when you want to see them.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Oh, there is a roof tile on that back pool that's
Yes.
cracked and sliding.
Yes.
She
They
gave
took
it
it off, I
That's
think,
the
when
one
we
we
blown down.